My name is Savannah. I'm 26 and I grew up in the suburbs outside Sacramento. That day, I never imagined I'd lose my entire family in a single evening. It all started with a simple message. Come home tonight. 6 o'clock. We need to talk. Dad didn't offer any explanation. I assumed it was just another family dinner, maybe about Brielle's upcoming wedding or Landon's new job at the real estate firm. When I stepped into the house, there was no smell of Mom's cooking, no music playing from the Bluetooth speaker in the kitchen corner. Just silence. A strange, heavy kind of silence. Dad, Mom, Landon, and Brielle were already seated in the living room. No one greeted me. No smiles. It felt like I had walked into a courtroom with the verdict already decided. "You're late," Dad said, his eyes fixed on the sofa armrest. Traffic was heavy. I gave a small smile, trying to stay calm. No one replied. Mom looked down at her folded hands. Brielle turned her face away, avoiding my eyes. Only Landon looked straight at me, a hint of satisfaction in his stare, like he had rehearsed this confrontation. "Sit down," Dad said. "We need to talk." I sat in the single chair by the window, the last light of the day casting their faces into shadow. No one spoke right away. Then Landon broke the silence, as if he couldn't wait a second longer. "She's been taking money from Mom and Dad's retirement account. We have the statement." He placed the printed sheet on the table, the red-marked transaction circled in the center. "What is this?" And, Brielle cut in, her voice sharp as steel, "You slept with my fiancé. He admitted everything. So don't even try to lie." I was stunned. I looked at each of them, waiting for someone to speak up, to say it was just a bad joke. But no one did. Not a single word in my defense. Not one question for me. Mom shook her head gently. "You're not the daughter we used to know." I tried to keep my voice steady. "How can you believe this? No one even asked me anything." "We've discussed enough," Dad said, cutting me off. "As a family, we've made a decision. You're no longer part of the trust, and it's best if you leave tonight." I thought I misheard. "Tonight?" Landon exhaled like he'd just been unburdened. "You have 1 hour. Your stuff's already packed. It's in the hallway." I got up, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Each step past them felt like walking on glass. Mom didn't look at me. Brielle crossed her arms, triumphant. Landon leaned back, satisfied. Like he had just closed a high-stakes deal. I walked through the garage. Dad was tossing something into the trash bin. I looked closer. It was the old photo album, the only original copy, the one with pictures of me and Grandma, graduation day, me beaming with our first kitten. "What are you doing?" My voice was dry. "You won't need this where you're going." Tears didn't come, not because I was strong, but because the pain hadn't yet found a way out. I got into the car and drove, not knowing where I was going, just knowing I couldn't go back. Night fell quickly. I found a rundown motel off 3rd Street with a blinking vacancy sign barely hanging on. The dim room light cast a yellow haze over the faded walls. I sat on the edge of the bed, arms around my stomach. A sudden, violent wave of nausea hit. I reached into my purse, dug through the bottom for the pregnancy test. The bathroom smelled of bleach. I stared at the 2 red lines on the test strip, my palms icy cold. Not 1, but 2. The doctor had once mentioned the possibility of twins. I never imagined. Not now. Camden is their father. A good man. One my family never respected simply because he didn't come from wealth or wear a fancy title. I hadn't even had the chance to tell him before everything fell apart. Now I was sitting in a dingy motel room. No money, no home, no one on my side. No backup plan, no easy path. I placed my hand on my belly, where 2 small lives were slowly growing. I had lost everything. But what my parents didn't know was that I was carrying something they would never again be able to control. I don't remember how long I stayed in that dark room. The bathroom light still glowed faintly yellow, reflecting my pale, hollow face in the cloudy mirror. The pregnancy test sat next to the sink, a cold, unblinking confirmation. I was pregnant. Not with one, but two souls. Everything still felt like a whirlwind. I had no idea how I would survive, but one thing was clear. I hadn't done the things they accused me of. I remember the look on Landon's face when he slid the bank statement across the table. The line said, "Transfer retirement account," circled in bold red ink. I didn't even know Mom had a separate account, let alone her login credentials. I'd never touched a cent, but because it showed S. Bennett, I was immediately the thief. Landon knew I used the name Savannah Grace on every document. He had helped me print my enrollment forms for freshman year. He knew, and still he chose to accuse me. And Brielle, she stared right at me and threw out her lie like a blade. "You tried to seduce my fiancé. He told me everything." I barely knew Brett. We spoke for maybe 5 minutes at a single engagement party. But Brielle didn't need evidence. She just needed a lie, told at the right moment. As for my parents, they didn't ask a single question. My silence was their proof. They believed Landon and Brielle so absolutely, there was no room left for truth. When I stepped into the garage, I saw Dad throw the album, the one Mom had spent years compiling from printed photos, into the trash. I used to cuddle it to sleep when I was a kid. Now it sat between a crumpled soda can and a greasy paper towel, like a memory they were proud to erase. I didn't retrieve it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew, even if I held on to those pictures, their memory of me was already rewritten. Forever. I couldn't sleep that night. Sitting on a sunken mattress with my back against the wall, I opened my phone and scrolled through old messages. And I started piecing the details together. A week before I was thrown out, I had used Mom's computer to submit a scholarship application. She told me to use it freely, then left for the grocery store. During that time, I logged into my own bank account to pay the processing fee using my credit card. I logged out afterward, but I forgot one thing. Landon was the one who had reset the password manager on that computer. He could access any account I had logged into. And with Brielle? I remember during that party, Brett had asked if I was interested in interning at his law firm. I politely declined and stepped away, but I forgot the way Brielle looked at us. Not curious, but furious. I didn't understand it then. Now I do. To them, all I had to do was stay silent at the wrong moment, and everything would be twisted into the worst version possible. The room was pitch black. Outside the window, the streetlight flickered like it was tired. I wrapped my arms around my belly and whispered softly, "We don't have anything, but Mommy won't let anyone touch this truth. No home, no property, no family. Just me, and 2 lives that haven't yet taken their first breath." I pulled out my last debit card. My balance was under $130. I had nowhere to go, no one to call, but I still had these hands, and a memory that never betrayed me. I opened a new note on my phone and started listing. The day I used Mom's computer, name of the scholarship file, the transaction ID Landon brought up, revealed this accusation. The call from Brett 2 days later, the one I never answered. The night in Phoenix was colder than I expected. Inside room 204 of a rundown motel nearly 5 miles from downtown, the heater buzzed steadily like a breath too shallow. I sat curled up on the bed, wrapped in the silence of a place that wasn't home. I needed something to keep myself alert, to avoid sinking deeper into fear. I reached into the canvas bag I had brought from home, the one that held a few clothes, an old lipstick, and something familiar I had almost forgotten. A dark brown leather notebook. I used to call it my survival log back in college, where I wrote every idea, every half-finished research plan, and conversations I never had the courage to say aloud. I opened it. The first page bore my own sharp, small handwriting. No one has the right to erase what you've thought. I flipped a few pages and stopped at Lipid Conversion Enzyme Project with a note underneath, unpresented, unpublished, not in thesis. This was the project I had poured myself into during the summer of junior year. Then, during a group presentation at school, Landon, who had accidentally seen the draft on my hard drive, stood before the entire committee and presented it as his own, without a single mention of my name. I still remember how it felt, like all the blood in my body had drained in one heartbeat. After that presentation, Mom hugged Landon, praising him, finally showing real academic initiative. I stood next to them, gripping my folder so hard the edges cut into my palm. I flipped to another page. A note from Thanksgiving 2018. The last one, Grandma was healthy enough to join us for dinner. That day, I wore her old bracelet, the one with the tiny teardrop-shaped blue stone. Brielle saw it and announced loudly, "That should have been mine. She only gave it to you because she pitied you for not being pretty enough for pageants." I pretended not to hear, but inside, I remembered every word. No one knew that a week before Grandma passed, she called me into her room and pressed something into my hand. A white gold wedding ring with a slightly scratched sapphire. "This," she said, "is for someone who protects what matters, not someone who performs." I had hidden it inside the hollowed-out spine of Jane Eyre, the book no one in the house had the patience to read past chapter 3. Yet at the funeral, Brielle showed up wearing that very ring, claiming, "Grandma promised this to the first daughter who got married." No one objected. No one questioned it. Just like when I was cast as the one who hurt the family. No one listened. I just stepped back, 1 inch, then another, until I no longer recognized myself in their eyes. I closed the journal and placed it on my lap. My hand settled over my belly, where 2 small lives were growing inside me. They wouldn't remember any of this, but I would never forget. I looked out the window. The streetlight reflected half my face in the glass, more determined than I'd realized. No longer the shy senior, no longer the family's odd one. It was a mother preparing for the biggest battle of her life. A life without family insurance, without retirement accounts, without any fake shields. I turned on the desk lamp and opened my laptop. My mind was heavy, but my fingers typed into the search bar. Grants for early-stage biotech founders, Arizona. Low-cost prenatal care clinics, Phoenix. Nonprofit incubator space for women-led startups. I didn't know exactly where I'd begin, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't start in silence. Outside, the wind stirred through dry palm trees. I leaned into the chair and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would be a new day, and this time, I was the one writing it. I was sitting in the city library, my hands still faintly smelling of old paper and cheap ink, when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "If it's true, you're not alone." I reread that sentence at least 3 times. No name, no punctuation, just the familiar rhythm of a text I'd once memorized. Camden. I had never told him I was pregnant. I hadn't even told him about being kicked out. The last time we spoke, I canceled a coffee date saying something came up with family. He simply replied, "I understand. Whenever you're ready, I'm still here." I never texted back. But a few hours later, as I sat slumped by the motel window, there was a knock. Gentle. 2 knocks. A pause. Then 2 again. The pattern only he used. I stepped out and opened the door. Camden stood there, sleeves rolled, hair tousled, gaze calm. Just like the first time he sat beside me in molecular research class. No questions, no blame. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, careful, like he feared I might vanish if he spoke too loud. Mm. I didn't answer. I just stepped back and let him in. We didn't talk much. I handed him a glass of water and placed the pregnancy test on the table without explanation. Camden looked down, then back at me, his expression steady. "You don't have to explain," he said. I nodded slightly. I wasn't planning to keep it a secret. Everything just happened too fast. He smiled, like he understood without needing to hear more. "Your family? I know part of what happened," he said. Turned sharply. "Who told you?" "My mom. She's old friends with your Aunt Regan. They still talk." He paused. "She told me what she heard. But I don't care what they said. I want to hear it from you." I sat on the edge of the bed. "I didn't steal. I didn't seduce anyone. They just needed a reason to push me out." He sat beside me, said nothing more, but his hand rested lightly on mine, like he was giving me a piece of strength I hadn't realized I'd lost. Camden didn't return home after that night. He sent his mother a message. "I'm okay, but I won't become what you expected me to be." Then he rented a small 2-bedroom apartment in South Tempe, where the morning light came in strangely beautiful. We stayed there for a while. He worked part-time at a data center to cover our living expenses. I spent most of my time at the city library, rewriting the entire research project Landon once stole from me, shaping it into a new version. The core idea was still lipid conversion enzymes, but I added applications for pregnant women and patients with malnutrition. A fresh innovation. A direction entirely my own. I named the project Solinova Bio, short for soul, line, and nova. Soul, bloodline, and a new beginning. Camden didn't interfere. He quietly printed documents, brought coffee exactly how I liked it, and stuck post-it notes all over the wall. "No one understands this idea better than you. No one's name needs to be ahead of yours on the author list. We're not getting revenge, we're rebuilding." I applied to 3 startup programs for young female founders. One responded. A 6-week program focused on public health and biotech innovation. I was selected for the pitch round. On the day I was scheduled to present, I wore a simple navy dress. My belly was starting to show. The organizers gently offered to reschedule due to health concerns, but I refused. "I'm not presenting despite being pregnant," I said. "I'm presenting while pregnant. Because that's part of why I'm doing this." Camden waited outside the auditorium. He didn't interfere. He just stood there, eyes steady as I walked on stage. Under soft lighting and a flickering projector, I began with one sentence. "They once told me I didn't deserve this idea. So today, I'll show them. I don't need anyone's permission to move forward." My first pitch happened in a space so upscale it felt foreign. The main hall of the Scottsdale Startup Hub was covered in marble, overhead lights beaming down on clusters of young founders with glowing laptop screens and shiny leather shoes. I walked in more than 4 months pregnant, wearing a charcoal maxi dress and a blazer Camden had ironed the night before. Some glances passed over me, brief, dismissive. Not everyone smiled, but everyone looked, and not all of them hid the judgment in their eyes. When it was my turn, the coordinator handed me the mic, and I took a deep breath. The first slide appeared. Solinova Bio, Advancing Hormonal Health for Women Overlooked by Public Health Care. I presented clearly and concisely. What I said wasn't a dream, it was data. Enzyme code optimization, and a strategic approach to reaching clinics in under-resourced counties. Every word had been written, reviewed, and rewritten over dozens of sleepless nights. When I finished, the room was quiet for a few seconds before a man in the front row spoke. He had silver hair, a diagonal striped tie, and a name tag that read, "Greg Martin, Senior Venture Advisor." "Yes, Savannah," he said with a faint smirk and a tilted head. "I won't deny your passion, but let me be honest. We've invested in enough single mothers trying to prove something. They all drop out before the first financial round." I felt my heart beat slow in my chest. No one spoke up. No one asked why my numbers were so solid. They only saw the bump, and what they believed to be a liability. I left the auditorium with a dry throat and legs heavy as stone. Outside, the sun was shining but gave no warmth. Camden stood by the car, and when he saw me, he gave a quiet nod. He didn't ask. He just opened the car door, like silence itself could be a refuge. We drove home in silence. I didn't say anything until we got back to the apartment. I took off my shoes and collapsed onto the couch. They didn't see me, I said. They only saw a burden. Camden sat beside me. No hugs, no comfort, just one sentence. Then let them look. We'll keep building. The next morning, I opened my contact list. Familiar names appeared. Mom, Dad, Landon, Brielle, home. One by one, I tapped delete. I didn't need any of them to exist. I went for a prenatal checkup at a small clinic in a Mexican-American neighborhood. No one there knew who I was. I filled out the birth registration form with a new name. Alina Mason. Not Savannah Bennett, the name my family had branded with shame. Elena was the name I chose. Mason was the last name of the only person who had stayed beside me when everyone else walked away. The nurse didn't ask many questions. She simply held my hand while checking my blood pressure and smiled when she heard the heartbeat. Twins, she said. 2 strong, clear heartbeats. That evening, I reopened my project file. I deleted the old introduction, the part that talked about origins and family influence. I rewrote it. Solanova wasn't created to impress. It was created to fill a gap, the kind people like me have been left behind in. Behind this product is not a prestigious pedigree, but a woman carrying 2 lives in her belly, writing code in a 2-bedroom apartment, asking no one for permission to begin. I saved it, didn't send it anywhere, but I knew I'd just done what needed to be done. Near midnight, I received an email. The subject line read simply, "Initial funding approved." At first, I thought I had misread it, but when I clicked in, a short, concise message appeared, and one line made my heart skip. Selenova bio is bold and deeply insightful. I reviewed your pitch deck. Most people miss what truly matters, but I didn't. Funding, $25,000, no strings, just keep your voice steady. Signed, R. Ainsley, Southwest Biotech Innovation Fund. I'd never heard of him, but I knew the fund. They rarely backed solo founders, especially those without a commercialized product. I reread the email 3 times. My hand instinctively rested on my belly, where the baby stirred gently as if in agreement. The next morning, Camden printed that email and taped it to the fridge. "It's not about the money," he said. "It's because someone saw you, without needing anyone else to vouch for you." The following week, I received an invitation to a public health conference held in downtown Phoenix. It was just a small discussion panel for female founders. I almost declined the schedule clash with one of my prenatal appointments, but in the end, I accepted. Partly to thank those supporting me, partly because I needed to show that Solanova was no longer just a draft. Camden drove me to the hotel hosting the event. As soon as I stepped into the main lobby, a massive banner caught my eye. A face I recognized instantly with a chill. Brielle. Her face was front and center on the main sponsor banner with a shimmering slogan beneath it. "For a healthcare future led by women, an initiative," by the Brielle Bennett Foundation. And just below that, a quote. "We need solutions that start from within, where hormones and cells shape behavior." I froze. That was the opening line from my senior thesis, the foundation of my idea about enzyme regulation based on women's hormonal cycles. No citation, no name. Just Brielle's confident gaze staring into the camera, as if she had conceived it all herself. I entered the conference hall with a coldness in my chest, not from shock, but from a familiar disgust. The shamelessness that had become their signature ever since they cast me out like a label that no longer fit. I sat in the front row, When the moderator called my name, I stood, hands slightly shaking but steps firm. The first slide appeared, the Solanova Bio logo. I didn't start with a standard introduction. I looked directly at the audience and said, "Some of you may have read the phrase, 'medical solutions must start at the hormonal level.' That wasn't a slogan, that was the first sentence of my thesis, written in 2018 in a tiny dorm room. And it didn't come from any prestigious family foundation." The room fell silent. I continued. "I don't come from a legacy. I wasn't polished by media. I'm just a 26-year-old woman pregnant with twins who chose to stay in science. No matter how many people told me I should walk away." A brief pause. Then I turned to the moderator. "And for the record, I don't have a sister." This time, murmurs rose. A few people glanced at the banner behind me. I didn't need to say a name. They connected the dots themselves. That night, a short clip of my speech circulated in a professional forum. People didn't focus on my pregnancy. They talked about that one line. "I don't have a sister." It became a quiet battle cry. A way of drawing a line in the sand against impersonators, usurpers, and those who had used power to silence authentic voices. Camden drove me home. Along the way, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from journalists, startup mentors, even young scientists offering support. I didn't reply right away. I just leaned back against the seat, the nightlights reflecting off the glass, casting light on a version of me that felt different. No longer the discarded daughter, but a real founder, rewriting what it meant to be valuable. 3 days after the conference, I received a cream-colored envelope, delivered by express mail right to my door. In the top left corner was a bold print, "McAllister and Reed Law Offices." I knew exactly what was waiting inside. Camden stood beside me as I opened it. Inside was a 2-page legal notice, written in polite but firm legalese, solid as cement. "Our client, Miss Brielle Bennett, hereby demands that Miss Savannah Bennett remove all defamatory public statements, including but not limited to those made at the Phoenix Public Health Conference on March 12th. Additionally, we require a public apology and a written commitment not to repeat any defamatory conduct. Failure to comply will result in legal action for reputational damage and personal brand infringement." I smirked. Brielle had spent her life in places where lies were dressed up as truth, where status was built on media connections and curated photos. She thought I was still the silent girl from that engagement party years ago. But this time, I wasn't standing alone. I stepped into my small office, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick folder I had been quietly building for more than 6 months. Original research documents on enzyme studies, drafts with time-stamped metadata, presentation files submitted to my thesis advisor. All backed up, physically and digitally, with third-party time verification. On a separate USB drive, I had an audio clip, a conversation accidentally recorded at a backyard party last year, where Brielle, while mocking my paper, said aloud to a group of friends, "She only knows how to write dry enzyme code. I just took that part, added some emotional language, and boom, inspiring speech." And another recording. My mother's voice, cold and cutting. "Savannah always makes things complicated. She doesn't know when to shut up. Brielle makes everything smoother. If she got pushed out, it's because she couldn't be controlled." I sent the entire package to my attorney, Renee Whitmore, a Detroit-born powerhouse who had sued 3 major healthcare companies for copyright violations. Her voice over the phone gave me confidence from the very first sentence. "We don't need to threaten. We just need to show them we've been ready for a long time." The trial was held on a soft sunny morning in early April. I wore the charcoal gray blazer, the one my mother once said made me look rigid, like a woman destined to stay single forever. I walked into the courtroom with Renee by my side. Camden sat in the back row, no tie, but his eyes followed my every step. Across the aisle, Brielle arrived 5 minutes late, wearing a cream-colored dress and oversized sunglasses that covered half her face. Calculated exhaustion. Flanking her were 2 sharply dressed young attorneys. The judge was Dorothy Leland, likely in her early 50s, Sharp-eyed and clearly intolerant of long-winded arguments, Renee began by submitting a thick, time-stamped file and a USB drive containing audio recordings. Your Honor, my client is the original creator of the Solanova technology platform, which was intellectually stolen by Ms. Bennett, who then used it to build her personal brand, secure federal grant funding, and establish a family-branded organization. We have clear evidence for each of these claims. The judge didn't ask further questions. She simply nodded and instructed the defense to respond. Brielle's lawyers spoke, attempting to paint a picture of family misunderstandings, miscommunication, and minor document similarities. But when the recordings were played, the courtroom fell into utter silence. No one mistook Brielle's voice. No one misread her intent. After reviewing all the evidence, Judge Leland issued a temporary ruling. This court hereby orders the suspension of any use of content, imagery, quotations, or materials related to the original enzyme research belonging to the plaintiff, Savannah Bennett, or the Solanova Bio brand, by the defendant, Brielle Bennett. This injunction will remain in effect until a final judgment is rendered. No applause, no cheers, but that silence, in a room once filled with noise and denial, was the clearest victory of all. I stepped out of the courthouse into the morning light, feeling like a part of the tumor buried in my memory had been cut away. No gloating, no satisfaction. Just one thing. Justice was no longer a luxury. I filed the official paperwork for Solanova Bio on a morning in early May. Every line, the mission statement, product categories, technical specs, had been written by me. When the system sent back a confirmation email reading, "Entity registered, active," I simply stared at the screen. No fireworks, no champagne toast, just a quiet milestone. Something burning slow in my chest, part comfort, part warning. Now the real beginning. I chose to continue researching women's hormonal health during pregnancy and perimenopause, especially for those left behind by the healthcare system. Immigrants, women of color, single mothers. This project wasn't about revenge. It was something the younger version of me had once wished for. A world where women didn't have to beg to be diagnosed correctly, to be heard, to be valued. Camden helped me find a small office in a co-working space in Tempe. Gray walls, scuffed wood floors, an old printer, but it was quiet, full of light. And it was mine. In the first week after launching the company, I received a handwritten letter, not an email, tucked in a yellow envelope with no return address, sent directly to my new office without going through any public registration channel. Inside was a single sticky note with block letters written in thick black marker. "Trash like you doesn't deserve to be a mother. Biotech isn't for people like you." Along with it was a photo of the white car I drive, taken at night from a close distance. I stared at the picture, then looked up. Camden was sitting in the corner of the room, reviewing the contract for the spectrometer purchase. "I'm okay," I said as I handed it to him. He read it, expression unchanged. "I'll install cameras, and I'll pick you up every evening until we move into the new place." The next night, my car was spray-painted in red letters on the hood, "Fake Mother." I didn't wipe it off. I didn't call the police. I drove it as is to work, parked it right in front of the building, stepped out with my pregnant belly showing under a plain cotton shirt, hair tied back, laptop in hand. Everyone saw. And I let them see. That same day, I signed the contract with the first community clinic to pilot Solanova Bio's early hormone testing kit. A week later, I received an email from my father. No subject line. Just one sentence inside. "Brielle is gone. It's just your mother and me now." No apology, no check-in, just a stark, stripped-down truth, packaged as if it might soften me. I didn't reply. I closed the email, turned off phone notifications, and returned to my desk. I was in the middle of editing a slide, analyzing hormone cycle response in women who had undergone late-stage ovarian cancer treatment. My mother, she had battled that disease. They caught it too late. When she started experiencing abnormal bleeding, the doctor said it was just age. When her belly began to swell, they said it was bloating. By the time I insisted she get imaging done, the tumor had already invaded the peritoneum. I remember the day she sat in the waiting room, lips pale, hands trembling, asking me, "Do you think there's a way people like me could find out sooner?" I had no answer then, because I had nothing. Now I do. Solanova Bio isn't to memorialize her. It's to continue what she never got the chance to do. Get diagnosed early, live longer, meet her grandchildren. I don't go back to the old house. I don't drive by it. I don't check Landon or my parents' social media anymore. But every morning when I walk into the office, I look at the whiteboard with the first line I ever wrote in black marker. They tried to write me out of the story. Now I'm rewriting it with science. I'm not waiting for anyone to say my name. And I've long stopped expecting a way back into places that never made space for me. Spring comes late in Arizona, but brings an oddly gentle warmth. Sunlight spills evenly across the white picket fence that surrounds the small home nestled in a quiet Chandler suburb. The backyard is just wide enough to grow 2 rows of fruit trees, one orange, one apple. But to us, it's an entire world. Leo and Leora, my twin children with Camden, just turned 3. They dart around chasing a butterfly fluttering above the garden beds. Leora giggles, holding up a plastic shovel still clumped with dirt. Leo, more reserved, watches his sister with quiet delight. Camden is seated under the pergola, adjusting the swing chain he built himself the first week we moved in. I stand not far away, a cup of herbal tea in hand, warmth from the morning still lingering from the lab. Behind me, in the cozy kitchen with oak shelves and hand-drawn pictures on the walls, a small box sits quietly on the table. It came from an unfamiliar address. No sender. Only my name written in careful cursive. I hesitated a few times before opening it. Inside was a photograph. I nearly held my breath as I saw it. An old print, yellowed with age, but clear and intact. In it was me, 11 years old, wearing a blue dress my grandmother had sewn, standing beside her in the old backyard. Her arm wrapped around my shoulder, and I was smiling awkwardly. The kind of smile a child makes before they learn how to pretend confidence. I recognized the photo. It had once been part of our family album. The only difference? I had never seen the full version. In the framed prints that used to hang in the old house, the part where I stood had been cut out. Only my grandmother's shoulder remained, the hem of my dress hidden by the frame. On the back of the photo, written in purple ink, was a handwritten line. "This is the version that matters." I don't know who sent it. Maybe a quiet relative still watching, or maybe, somehow, my grandmother had kept it for the right moment. I didn't cry. I just smiled. For the first time in years, I saw myself in a family photo, where I hadn't been erased. That night, after the kids fell asleep in their room, I sat beneath the pergola. The sky shifted to soft indigo, and the string lights hanging overhead glowed a warm gold. Camden brought out 2 glasses of lemonade, setting one down in front of me. "Are you planning to visit the research center tomorrow?" he asked, voice light as the breeze. I nodded. They're starting clinical trials in Tucson. I want to be there personally to monitor the process. Camden didn't ask any further questions. He knew what I needed and why I chose to go. I leaned back in my chair, eyes tracing the night sky scattered with faint stars. The old photo had been placed in a frame and now sat on my desk, right beside the atomic model I used to teach new students. I no longer dream of conversations that never happened. I no longer wait for apology emails, late-night phone calls, or invitations to Sunday dinners. I never asked to be on their list. They tried to erase me. But I built something they can't ignore. I've built something they can never deny. Leo and Leora will grow up in a home where truth is heard, where ideas are protected, where kindness doesn't come with conditions. They'll know that their mother was once thrown out of a place that used to be called family. But that didn't stop her from building a new one, a new future, with the same hands that once had nothing. The night breeze rustled through young branches, carrying the soft scent of damp earth and sun-dried orange peels. I closed my eyes, not to forget, but to remember. Completely. Savannah's story is a powerful reminder that real worth doesn't come from bloodlines or others' approval. It comes from having the courage to stand firm, to hold on to what's right in silence and action. In the face of rejection, she didn't beg to be remembered. She chose to build a life no one could erase. In the real world, anyone can be written out of someone else's story. But what truly matters is whether we dare to write a new chapter with our own hands. What do you think about Savannah's journey? What would you do in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow this channel for more heartfelt, real-life stories about family and resilience.